What's up, guys? Thanks for checking out PLOQuickPro.com. This is Casino Crime.
With Alien Slayer.
Cool. And today we've got a really special episode for you. Continuing on our theory discussion, going over hand histories, Yurik and I thought it would be a good idea to do an extensive study or cover, I guess, donk betting. And there's a lot of reasons why I really prefer talking about donk betting. One reason is I think that donk betting is really effective, and I don't think that a lot of players use it. And also, a topic that actually most people don't think about is if you ever have aspirations of playing any heads up, you really need to become comfortable with donk betting, since you're going to be playing a lot of single raised heads up pots out of position. Donk betting is one of the best ways to negate the positional advantage that that player has on you. And even though in a lot of other episodes we've kind of hammered home the importance of being in position, the truth is that you're not always going to have the luxury of playing in position every hand. So when you're out of position, you want to at least minimize the damage of playing out of position, or perhaps even make money against certain players. So we created this little note for you to give you a better idea of what we're covering today. We already talked about how donk betting helps us negate the positional advantage, and we'll expand more on that in the hand histories. When we're donk betting, we can do it with a broad range of hands depending on the board texture and the number of players. And I think you'll see as we make it through this stuff, we try to include a lot of different situations where the number of opponents changes, the board texture changes, the SPR changes, and our hand value changes to sort of give you a better idea of what you should be looking for. And as always, opponent tendencies in any poker hand pretty much trump everything else, and donk betting is no exception to the rule. And we want to donk bet the highest percentage against players who have a low c-bet frequencies, mostly with hands that we want to build upon on, or build a pot with, that we want that we can continue aggression with on later streets. We're going to cover both heads up and three-way pots, but particularly our game plan in three-way pots is to donk with a strong range, because we don't want to give free cards. And as we've talked about again in other episodes, when pots are more multi-way, that's when people start to play more straightforward, more ABC, checking back more flops, and again, all of which reduces their c-betting frequency. Yurk, do you have anything to add to that before we jump into this, or is there anything you want to add about donk betting?
I think you covered it pretty well so far. We will see through the hands what else we're gonna talk.
Right, perfect. Okay, so let's hop into the action. In this first hand, folds around to the button, who is a pretty loose player. He's not like this is actually a hand I played a while ago, and my reads on him are that he's obviously really loose, playing a 48-25, but he plays relatively straightforward post flop. I decided to make the call out of the small blind. I think it's okay. It's of course on the looser side, but I think my thought process at the time was this hand is actually more polarized than you think, and out of position you do want kind of those more polarized hands. The reason this is more polarized is because of the gaps. So when it does actually flop straight draws, they're pretty strong straight draws. You could flop some of the like 16 out wraps with this type of hand. Also, the other thing to point out is that he gave me a pretty good price on the call. Min open the button, and the big blind isn't particularly 3-betty, so I think that more often than not he's just going to call as well. So the big blind calls as well. And on the flop, which is ace-10 deuce two-tone, I laid out 45 into 60, big blind folds, and the button calls. Now, there's a lot of different things that I want to mention before we get to the turn action. Number one, I think that this is a great spot to donk bet, and here's why. First being, again, like I think that since the button's range is a lot wider, I don't think that it's a spot that he's going to necessarily c-bet a lot. I think that he can have a lot of 10 and sidecars type hands, 10 with a gutter, raggedy ace-x type hands that kind of want to play a two-street game and check back. And also the other reason why I like donk betting is since we do have the nut gut shot, the nut flush draw, and the pair to block 2 pairs and sets, I think that it's very unlikely that we do get raised. And additionally, I think it's a good idea to build a pot with these types of hands, because the player in position, of course, is going to call with a wide range of hands that we have dominated. So let's say he has like a pair with a gutter with a worse flush draw, or even just like a 3-4-5 type hand with a backdoor flush draw might call. So even though we're building a pot out of position, I think we're building a pot with a hand that can take some heat both right now and on later streets, and also one that we can build to win later on. Yurik, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, the only thing is that it's also we have to be make sure that we look at the SPR in the beginning and we see that it's super high at this point, like close to 30 on the flop. And there are, because some persons might watch this video and say, "Yeah, your hand looks pretty strong. Why don't you check raise with it?" And the reason that we don't want to check raise is that our hand is fairly strong and has reasonable equity against everything. But if we're up against the top of his range, like talking about sets yeah, basically sets, we are not doing that good. We have like 35, close to 40% equity, and we don't really want to blow the huge pot. So we prefer, if we donk and he would raise, then we could just call, and we still have plenty of money behind, and we can make perfect decision on later streets since we have a nut draw. So we have perfect visibility.
Right.
We will always know where we're at.
Right.
So the hand plays much better either as a donk or as a check call, because by check raising we kind of only fold out. We are making him fold the hands that we have dominated.
Right.
Yeah. So
Definitely. And yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the SPR is very important. And the majority of donk betting situations are going to come in single raised pots. But like you said, I mean, if we check raise, we're only going to get like the worst hands to fold. And we're going to get like the hands that are doing very well against us to stick around. So, of course, it's very good. So we, of course, turn the nuts on the four of spades and continue our aggression by betting 85 into 150. Now, we talked a little bit in between when we were analyzing this hand about how this is just too small of a bet size. Yur, can you expand a little bit more on that, on why you think that my bet size should have been bigger in this spot?
sure. The main point was that we were talking about his likely range that we'll call the flop with, and we are saying that most likely he's going to just call with any two pair, like even ace 10, because it doesn't want to get 3-bet.
Right.
So he's more likely to kind of pot control or see the turn card. Also, with all his smaller flush draws that somehow has some other equity to go with it, he's just going to call. So with this type of range on the turn of smaller flush draws and two pairs, they will very likely call a second barrel here, because we're kind of getting polarized, so we could also just donk here again with like an inside straight draw, rep draw that missed and now tries to bluff at the pot. So he's more often than not, he's going to call with most parts of his range, and therefore we want to make the bet bigger because he's kind of inelastic. So if we bet 120, he's calling the same range that we'll call an 85 dollar bet. So we want to go for a bigger bet.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, if we bet bigger on the turn, of course, we set ourselves up to win a bigger pot on the river. That's a very good point. And he does call. So before we really get to the river, what do you expect like the majority of his range to be like? I think that actually in spots like this you do see a lot of lesser flushes, because I think that even though some players, especially one like this guy who's looser, I think that he will make a kind of like one more call with like an ace deuce type of hand, but I do think that you will run into a lot of worse flushes at this point.
Yeah, I think also combinatorically wise, he will have a lot of flushes in his range. If he's a loose guy, he won't just fold a bare mid flush draw on the flop. So yeah, he will have much more flushes that got there than two pair hands. That's true.
Right. Okay. So river gives us the nut straight and the nut flush, just like the best hand ever, of course. And now it's just like a matter of picking bet sizing. And my overall take on situations like this, even though we're focusing more on donk betting, I think it's a good spot to talk just for a second about value betting. This is a pretty big bet, but I think that in spots where it's, especially when your opponents are looser and it's very obvious that they have a bluff catcher, I tend to bet on the bigger side. A lot of weaker players and also students who are just starting out playing poker or PLO, typically like they bet like way too small on the river with their nuts types of hands when it's obvious that the opponent has a bluff catcher, and I think that's just a really easy way to kind of cost yourself some money. One quote that I heard in a beluga whale video a while ago that has kind of stuck with me over the years was, the quickest way to double your win rate is to double your bet size. And I think that especially when you get to the river in value betting spots like this, it really benefits you to bet a little bit bigger. What do you think about that, Jörg?
Definitely. There are a lot of players who are just not capable of folding flushes, and this means that he's inelastic to the bet size on the river, and that makes obviously a big difference for us if we bet half pot here or close to pot size, because if he's calling with the same range, then we are just losing the opportunity of getting more value with our nuts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think potting is unnecessary, but I definitely think that you should bet somewhere in like the 75% pot type of range.
Yeah, potting is maybe may be too big that even the loser guys will get kind of afraid of the nuts and may even let go of flush. But yeah, definitely on the like at least 3/4 pot size, it seems like a fine bet.
Right. And in the actual hand, our opponent calls, and he does actually have the second nuts. So overall, like his hand makes a lot of sense, right? Peeled in position, he had a gutter in the second nut flush draw, made his flush, and then he called down. And you can kind of see where donk betting really benefited us in this hand, because if, for example, like the flop would have checked around, we wouldn't have been able to get nearly as much value as when we did when we bet the flop. And that's one of sort of the fundamental principles, I guess, of PLO is that pots grow geometrically. This isn't Hold'em where you can just bet 1.5 times the pot and then ship the river to get value. You kind of need to build the pot from early on with your strong and nutty hands to make sure the pot's big enough on later streets to maximize value.
Definitely.
Cool. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we covered it pretty well.
Cool. Let's check out the next one.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Casino Crime here. Now, if you like this video and you want more, then go ahead and click the subscribe button below right now. And if you want to join me for more of my 6 max success secrets and free video tutorials, just click the link to the right. See you inside the trainings. Good luck.